In the 1700s, a man named Jonathan Carver explored the Mississippi River. On his travels, Native Americans told Carver about the shining mountains to the west, which were covered with large crystals. Carver thought that these crystals were diamonds. In fact, the crystals that the Native Americans described to Carver weren't diamonds. They were crystals of snow that melted in the spring and fed the rivers and lakes of Western America. Most people would be disappointed if they went looking for diamonds and found water. However, in the dry West, water is very important. The people of Denver, Colorado know that very well. Their city is located at the foot of the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains. Denver receives only about 14 inches of rain a year. The people of Denver need much more water than that to survive. Luckily, the western side of the Rocky Mountains receives more rain than the eastern side. The solution was to tunnel through the Rockies to get more water. Why is the western side of the Rocky Mountains wetter than the eastern side? Because the winds that blow in from the Pacific Ocean carry a great deal of moisture. When the winds reach the western side of the Rockies, they are forced to rise to cross the mountains. As the air rises, it grows cooler. Cool air can't hold as much moisture as warm air can. Therefore, much of the moisture falls as rain or snow on the western side of the Rockies. By the time the winds get over the mountains, they have lost most of their moisture. Mountain streams are valuable not only as sources of water, but also as sources of power. As streams and rivers travel downhill, they sometimes form waterfalls. The currents of the waterfalls can be used to make power. Hundreds of years ago, people used the force of the falling water to turn water wheels. The water wheels powered machinery. Some machinery ground grain or wove cloth. Today, water gives power to huge generators that make electricity. Today, when there is no waterfall, people sometimes build a dam to hold back the water in a river. When the water behind the dam is released, it flows downstream rapidly. It has as much or more force than water going over a waterfall. This running water turns huge generators in hydroelectric plants that make electricity. Mountains make this possible. It's easy to make fun of Jonathan Carver for thinking that the crystals on the slopes of the Rocky Mountains were diamonds. But in a sense, he wasn't as far off as you might think. No one has ever found diamonds in the Rocky Mountains, but the Rockies are bursting with other valuable minerals. Gold was discovered in the Rockies near Pikes Peak in 1858. People rushed to the area to get their share of the riches. Mining camps and towns sprang up overnight. Very few people became rich from the gold. Very little gold is left today, at least near the surface. But people discovered other minerals during the gold rush: silver, lead, copper, zinc, and more. Other mountain ranges around the world also contain minerals. The Ural Mountains in Russia are rich in zinc, silver, platinum, and nickel. Miners dig these minerals out of the mountains and send them to nearby factories. Pennsylvania's Allegheny Mountains are full of coal, as are the Appalachian Mountains in Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Coal from the Allegheny and Appalachian Mountains helped American industry to grow in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Some people make a living farming in the mountains. Often they raise animals. People in the Andes raise llamas and alpacas, and people in the Himalayas raise yaks. Some farmers in the Alps herd goats on the high pastures during the summer. As you have discovered, these animals are all sure-footed. They are used to traveling up and down hillsides in search of plants to eat. Farming is somewhat easier on the flat top of a plateau, but it is hard to grow crops on steep mountainsides. For hundreds of years, the people of the Andes and the Himalayas have used terracing to create fields. In southeastern Asia, terracing is used on a large scale to grow rice. Terracing turns mountain slopes into giant staircases with lots of flat surfaces for growing crops. Farmers build stone walls on the mountainsides. They then fill the area behind the walls with dirt. This creates a series of step-like flat fields. Today, mountains also attract lots of tourists. These tourists come to enjoy mountain sports like sledding, snowboarding, and skiing. Skiing developed long ago in the mountains of Europe and Asia. People used skiing to travel when snow covered the ground. Archaeologists have found skis that they believe were made almost 9,000 years ago. These ancient skis were carved out of bones or wood. No one knows when skis were first used in warfare. We know that in 1200, Norwegian soldiers traveled on skis to spy on their Swedish enemies. Over the years, skiing became a popular sport. Skiing competitions began in the 1800s. It was introduced as an Olympic sport in 1924. Skiing is still a popular mountain sport today. People who are looking for other challenging pastimes can try mountain climbing. Some people enjoy hiking in the mountains. Others like the challenge of trying to climb the tallest mountains in the world. Perhaps the greatest challenge of all is climbing to the peak of the world's tallest mountain, Mount Everest. The temperatures are freezing. The winds are very strong. Snowstorms come up unexpectedly. The air is thin and has little oxygen. Over many years, many people tried to climb the mountain but failed. Then, in 1953, a New Zealander named Sir Edmund Hillary and a Nepalese named Tenzing Norgay managed to reach the top of the mountain. Later, Hillary explained what it was like to try to sleep in a tent on the mountainside. He described the wind as it screeched across the ridge, causing the most awful noise. He described how cramped the tent was, and how he and his fellow adventurer, Norgay, struggled to rest, hunched up in sleeping bags, unable to stretch out in freezing conditions. Hillary explained that time seemed to move slowly then, as he and Norgay anxiously awaited the light of day. Since Hillary and Norgay reached Everest's peak in 1953, thousands of others have followed. Some climbers have made it to the top and back. Many others have not. More than 200 people have frozen to death or were overwhelmed by avalanches while trying to reach the peak. Why do so many people risk their lives trying to climb Mount Everest and other tall mountains? Partly it is because human beings like to challenge themselves, but it may also be because human beings are fascinated by mountains.